Hello, everyone, and welcome to our maternal depression call today. We're so glad you're joining us. We're going to give it just a few more minutes for everyone to get on board, but thank you for being here. All right, let's go ahead and get started, knowing that we may have a few additional people joining us, and that's fun. Welcome to our maternal depression call. This is our November action period call. And again, we're just so glad that you are able to join us today. If you're not planning to be in maternal depression, you know the drill. Breastfeeding, intimate partner violence links are on the screen now. So if that's where you're hoping to be, go ahead and jump out. For everyone else, let's take a quick look at our agenda. So we're going to start with a little bit different. We're not going to do the kindness meditation, but we are going to do just one quick one to get us grounded and focused. We're going to do a data review, as we always do, and then Rachel is going to share some run chart rules with you that I think you'll find really interesting and helpful. We have teaching content with Darius today. And then we have two different teams. They're going to do some peer sharing. We'll do our evaluation and wrap up. So before we get started with our agenda, if you see a blue screen, that's intentional. We're going to take just a moment together because we know how hectic your days can be. We know what a stressful time this is for everyone. Home visiting is a rewarding job, but it's a difficult job on the best of days. And during some of these turbulent times, we do understand how much stress folks are under. And so we want to take just a moment together to ground ourselves, to bring us into focus for this call today. So I'm going to invite you to take just a moment so we can fully focus on this meeting. If you'd like to turn your camera off, I'd invite you to do that. Just take a moment. Let's get centered. Turn your camera off if you want. If you're comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes. If you prefer not to close your eyes, that's fine. Just you might want to gaze downward, something to keep you from being distracted by the environment around you. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes, bring attention to how you're sitting, relax your shoulders, put your feet flat on the floor, and take just a moment so that you can be both relaxed and present in the moment. And I'll give you just a moment to do that. So today we're just going to bring attention to our breathing. We want you to notice and focus on your breathing. We're going to take a few deep breaths together. And we're hoping that that will give you the time to let go of your busy day and just become present in the moment. We're going to do just a simple exercise together. We're going to take 5 breaths together. And as you breathe in, we're going to breathe in to a count of 4. Breathe in through your nose. We're going to hold that breath for 4 moments. And then we're going to exhale through our mouth for a count of 4. And if you're comfortable and like to do so, you can even make a little whooshing noise as you let your breath go. While we're doing this, just concentrate on your breathing. Okay, let's get started. So take a deep breath in, inhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold it for 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. Inhale through your nose at 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 2, 3, 4, and let it go for 2, 3, 4. One more. Breathe in through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. Let's do one more. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And let it go. 2, 3, 4. So now, just to end this time, you can start to move a bit. Move your hands, your feet, stretch if you'd like. If you have your eyes closed, this is the time to open them. When you're ready, turn your cameras back on. And hopefully we'll be focused for our time together. Thank you so much for participating in this mindfulness moment. And now we're going to switch gears. We're all refreshed. Rachel, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sally. That was wonderful. All right, y'all. So starting like we normally start, just looking at our run charts of who has submitted data and the teams that are active in their PDSAs. And you'll see for September, we're up to 93% of the teams that have submitted data. And then as of October, so this one came up just recently, we're at 78% of teams that are active in their PDSAs. So just encouraging you to keep submitting your data, encouraging you to keep testing your PDSAs and documenting them. Really excited to learn from you. And I know we have 2 teams at the end of or towards the end of the call that are presenting on their PDSAs. So hopefully you get an idea of something you can shamelessly steal and test for this month. So really excited to see that. And we're going to talk today about variation in run charts and what you can learn from them. I mean, we collect all this data, but what does it mean? And so we're going to give you some skills today to build on your CQI skills. We're going to add another tool to your toolbox, and you'll be able to read and interpret run charts by the end of this. So really excited to introduce this to you. So just grounding ourselves in what is CQI, we are creating improvements in our maternal depression processes and outcomes by learning. And we're learning what is effective via a structured methodology. So we test, we implement those tests once we have tested efficiently, and our processes are supposed to be getting better and better as we learn more about our systems. We learn what doesn't work, we learn what works, and we continue to grow. But there's always variation. And what do I mean by variation? We're looking for improvement in our measures. We are testing PDSAs out. We are hoping to reach our goals in the fastest way, but there's variation that exists. And we are trying to detect that true change very quickly, but variation exists in everything we do. So when you think about your household costs and how it fluctuates, or your stress fluctuates, your weight, how long it takes you to get to work or get up for work. I know this morning I was I was running a little late. It took me a little bit longer than some mornings I'm up and I'm ready and I'm going. Or the gasoline consumption of your car. It varies. We have natural variation in everything we do in life. There's also variation between people. So how well you can do a task versus how well someone else can do a task. Our learning styles or our perception of quality. There's all sorts of variation in our lives. So what do we need? What we need, excuse me, are tools to differentiate between true changes in our data that are the result of our interventions and then natural variation in data. How can we tell the difference between the two? So I'm going to invite you guys. I would love for you to find your pulse. So you can either find it at your neck, you can find it on your wrist. I always like to take it at my wrist. Wow. Sorry, I'm a little stuffy today if you can't tell. But if you will take 2 fingers on your neck or your wrist and locate your pulse, I am going to say go. And when I do, I want you to count the number of pulses that you feel. We're going to do this for 15 seconds. So, and I'm going to say stop. And when I say stop, I want you to type the number into the chat box, right? So go. Stop. And if you can type that number into the chat box, that would be wonderful. 19, awesome. Great. Oh, great, great. Oh, you guys are good at this. Hang on. I am going to share my screen really quickly. And okay, when I do that, I'm losing the chat. So I saw a 19, I saw a 17, a 20.
I can read to you, Rachel, if you want.
Okay, that would be great.
All right, 17, 20, 20, 22, 16, 22, 24, okay. 15, 18, 20, right. 16, 22, 17.
We're good, I guess. I was like, I don't know how many I chose to just do this. So thank you guys all for doing that. You'll see that there is variation in our pulse for each individual for 15 seconds. So we have some that were 22, we have some that were down to 15. And so there's variation in that number. What I want you to do now is turn your camera off, and I want you to do 10 jumping jacks. You can stay on camera if you would like, but I just want you to do 10 jumping jacks, and then we're going to come back and we're going to take our pulse for 15 seconds again. So go ahead and knock those jumping jacks out. If you don't want to do jumping jacks, do high knees, do something for about 10 seconds that'll get your heart rate up. You can do, I don't know. My least favorite exercise to do is burpees, but if that brings you joy, I encourage you to do what brings you joy. All right, so 10 of those lovely jumping jacks or something to get your heart rate up. And then when I see people join back on camera, I know that you have finished those, and we'll get to our pulse taking. All right, see Mary Catherine back. All right, see more people back. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start. I'm gonna say go, and you're gonna take it. So go. Stop. And go ahead and use the chat box again and put in how many pulse you counted. All right, let's see it. 23, 25, 24, 26, 22. Did I miss more? Oop. 27. Oop, my chart stopped 23, 25. All right. Thank you so much. So you'll see we had a lot of variation when we started, and then once we did those jumping jacks, you'll see it was much higher than what we had to begin with. And so our change, which was our jumping jacks, led to our higher pulse rates. So still had some natural variation between those points, but you will see that they're higher. Just showing you that run charts can be used for literally anything. Sally, if you will share your screen again, that would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. So when we don't understand variation, we usually are denying the data. It doesn't really fit what is your vision of reality. Or we see trends and tendencies where there aren't any. We blame or give credit to people for things that they have no control over. And we explain that natural variation as if they're special events. So if we had 2 data points going up, we might be really excited to react to that. But it's just that natural variation, and nothing's really happening there. And so what do we do with this? We have run charts, and that's how we're going to understand variation. And you guys should be very familiar with run charts by now. But these are those graphical displays of our data over time. You're collecting these for 7 measures, 8 measures, and you've been doing this for months now. So this is our way of helping to answer the fundamental question of CQI. How will I know if a change is an improvement? You'll know through your data. You'll go. So what are we doing? We've collected our data and we've determined our baseline. We have collected our data for the first 6 months, and that is where the median is graphing from. So if you look at your run charts, you'll have that purple dot on the purple dotted line. That's your median. That's where we're basing this off of. If you'll go to the next slide. All right. So then we're testing changes and analyzing our data to see if that change resulted in improvement. So you'll see here, the median is the purple dotted line. Our goal line is that red dotted line above. And we tested a change, I would say right in July. Sorry, it's pretty small for me, so I'm sure it's small for you. So I'm taking a guess there. That it's led to kind of a big jump in numbers. And we're seeing that our data is higher now. But we have specific rules that help us to interpret run charts and learn from what our data is showing us. And those rules there are 3 rules, and they're very simple. And they'll help you decide if your data points on your run chart are random, so that natural variation, or non-random and a signal of improvement. So we are looking for shifts, trends, and astronomical data points. Those are the 3 ones that you have to remember. So our first rule is called a shift. And you can have a shift above or below the median, but it's 6 or more consecutive points that are above or below the median. And if there are values in that are directly on the median, you'll just skip those and keep counting. They don't interrupt your shift, so you can touch the median and bounce back up and still be considered above in a shift. And the median is very important here. So our median in our graphs that we look at very regularly is that purple dotted line. And a shift is evidence of significant change. It can be improvement or it can be a degradation of our process performance. So it could be either way. If you'll go back 1 slide, oh, there we go. Thank you, Sally. And it's a statistically significant change. And I'm not going to go into all the stats involved in this, but just know that a shift is a statistically significant change. So we're seeing 6 consecutive points either above or below the median. And that signals to us that there was a change here. All right. Next is a trend. And a trend is 5 or more consecutive points that all go up or all go down. And if 2 points are equal and have the same value, we'd only count one of them and ignore the other. And that would be our 5 points. So identical points, much like the median for shifts, identical points and trends don't interrupt that trend. So you'll see here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points here in that first one on the left that are going up. So it's 5 or more consecutive points going up. So we have a trend that's ascending. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points that are going down. So we have a downward trend here at the end. And our last point, or our last rule, excuse me, is an astronomical point. So it's a data point that is obviously and clearly different. Everyone who looks at a graph should agree that the point is unusual. And your graphs are always going to have a highest and lowest point. But being the highest or lowest point doesn't make it astronomical. It's way out of line. It's our outlier. And it's subjective, but it works pretty well to identify those statistically significant different data when applied here. So those are your 3 rules. We have a shift, 6 or more points above or below the median, a trend, 5 or more points ascending or descending, and astronomical points. So those are the 3 ones that we have to remember. All right, we are going to play a game. I'm super excited to be able to do this. So who wants to be a millionaire version of run chart rules? Which we're super excited. So this one, we're going to show you some run charts, and we are going to ask you if it's a shift, a trend, an astronomical point, or non-random random variation. Excuse me. And you'll have 3 lifelines to choose from. So you could use 50-50. You could use phone a friend, where you ask a colleague on the line to weigh in, or you could ask the audience and all participants can type their guess in the chart. So does anyone want to be brave and be our first contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Run Chart Rules? Anybody?
All right, I will.
Oh yes, I saw you come off mute.
I like games, so we'll try it.
Thank you. All right, our first run chart is coming up. All right, so our question, does this graph have a signal according to the one of the 3 rules? So we're looking at the percent of children who are screened for developmental risk. This isn't our maternal depression data, but do you see a shift, a trend, or an astronomical point here?
Yes, I see a shift. Do you want me to say more?
Where do you, here, we can go to the next one, Sally.
Okay.
Awesome. Is that where you saw it? She didn't even need to use one of her lifelines. Perfect. Thank you so much, Amy. All right, so there is a shift, just like Amy said, on that tail end of the run chart. So we had 5 or 6 or more points above the median, and you'll see that there. All right, Amy, want to try another one?
Sure.
All right, does this graph have a signal according to the 3 rules? And if you don't know, you always can use a lifeline.
It's not a shift. I don't see any of those 3.
Did you ask the audience?
Sure.
All right, audience, here's your chance to chime in. What do you see in this run chart? Any of the rules? All right, so we're
okay. I see where my mistake was.
Oh, you're good. So we're seeing trends. So that 5 or more points going in the same direction. So if you'll go to the next slide, Sally. And we also have a shift in that as well. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points that were all ascending. And then we had 6 points that were also over the median line. All right. Our last one. What about this one?
Okay. I don't see any of those, but I will do 50-50.
Okay. So we will take away shift and trend. So you're left with astronomical point or not, or random variation, excuse me.
I don't think that 1 point is high and is different enough that it would be an astronomical point.
Perfect. You are correct. So there's no rules on this chart. There's just random variation. So great job, Amy. Thank you so much for playing with us. If I could send you a prize, I would, but good job. All right. So what do we do with this? Now we can identify our variation. What do we do with random versus non-random? So our random variation, like that last graph, it requires a process redesign. So we're going to identify key processes to change, and we're going to test those using PDSA cycles and implement those successful changes. So we haven't had success in the PDSAs that we're testing yet, and we still have random variation. We're not seeing those trends or those shifts yet. So we need to start thinking about what we can change and what we can continue to test. If we have non-random variation, so you have a positive shift, an upward shift, or trend, we're going to identify the reason for the signal. We're going to learn from that signal and spread and scale those changes that we've used. What about if it's a downward trend or a downward shift? That might be our signal that we should abandon those changes. If we don't want to be going downward, we should probably get rid of those changes that we've tested so far, because we're trying to improve. So just taking our data, the maternal depression data, and looking at it and looking at our run charts, I pulled some together for us to look at together. And as you're looking at your own run charts, really start to wonder, what's our data showing us? Are there those 3 run chart rules? Is there something going on in this run chart? And then as you're starting to wonder that, you can really dig in and start planning your PDSAs accordingly. So here we have that percent of women with a positive screen for maternal depression did not access evidence-based services that got that home visitor check-in within 30 days. And you'll see we have a trend here. So if you'll go to the next one, Sally. We have those 5 data points, 5 or more data points, all going in a certain direction. Sorry, if you'll go back one slide, there we go. Some of these, it's really hard to tell, but some of them are the same value or very close. So you'd have to kind of look and see the exact values, but it is a trend in the data, an upward trend. So we are seeing that signal of improvement in our data here. We're getting closer to our goal line. All right, next one, Sally. I know I've got about 5 minutes to wrap this up. Another one of our run charts that we've been looking at as a group, this is the percentage of women with positive screen for maternal depression that weren't in evidence-based services that verbally accepted. And so we're seeing here, once again, that positive trend. We've got 6, I think there are 6 data points here that are all going upwards. We're getting very close to a shift at this tail end that is over our median, but we haven't gotten there yet. We're just waiting on one more data point to be over that median, and we can say we have a positive trend and a shift. All right. And here we go. Oh yes, and a shift that may be above our goal too, which is awesome to see. So remember that purple dotted line is our median. And so as we're looking at this run chart, we see that we do have, if you'll click on the next slide, Sally, we do have a shift. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points that are all above our median here, which is really awesome. And we can skip this next one. I know I'm running out of time. So just wanting to let you know that these can also be negative, or we can be having descending shifts or trends. So as we're looking at our data and we're wondering about what's going on, when we see those shifts or trends that are going below the median or going downward, we really do need to start to wonder, what are we doing? What are we testing that's led to this? And maybe we need to abandon those cycles and try something different. So here we have those 6 data points below our median. So really going back to wonder about what we've been doing and what we're testing and how that's showing these signals in our data.
Hey, Rachel, when I look at this, I love what you're pointing out, which is that when you see something that's a true signal of variation, of change, not just natural variation, the question should be, what's going on here? And when I look at this, I notice the denominator, that green dot went up. So this is a program that has identified more women with depression. So it may be that what you're doing is you're screening better, either more frequently or with new techniques that are working better for you and your clients. So now you've got 6 women who you would like to get into evidence-based evidence-based services, but you still have only 2 of them who are in services, but that's a smaller percentage. So this is going down in part because you've made improvements in earlier parts of your process, and it might signal to you now it's time to shift your testing into a different part of the driver diagram.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. All right, this is the last one. So just remember that all of our process and measures have variation. It's very normal. And we really want to be able to identify that random versus non-random variation to really determine our appropriate action and what our next steps are. Our run charts are really allowing us to view patterns of data over time. So we have been collecting this, and we really want to use the data to make improvements and to choose our next steps. And you have those 3 rules to interpret run charts and understand variation now in your toolkit. So you have shift, trend, and astronomical point that you know all about now to help you determine what's going on in your own run charts. So as you review your run charts this month, keep those in mind and let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to answer anything.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This was really informative. And we're really hoping that you'll take what you've learned or reviewed, for those of you who are familiar with this, and really use it with your own run charts, hopefully sooner rather than later. So while it's fresh in your mind, you can look at your own data. These are tools to help you analyze that and make those decisions about what you're doing well, what you may want to move and work on next. And just chart your course for the next few months over this collaborative. So again, thank you, Rachel. We're going to shift gears for a moment. I think we're going to wait. Go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and move forward and give Darius some time to have conversation with you around best practice for referrals. So Darius, we're going to shift to you now. Whoop.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Allie. So good to see everyone, and happy to be here today to talk a little bit about referral and monitoring, or referral and follow-up. And I just want to start the conversation by talking about how, as part of the teaching slides, I intentionally chose the phrase referral and follow-up. Right? Because I think that that is one really important consideration as we think about making referrals, not just for perinatal mental health, but for other, psychosocial risks and other issues faced by home visiting clients. It isn't just here's a referral, but it's here's a referral and let's monitor that progress after the referral is being made. Because many of you, I'm sure, have experienced that maybe the referral part is somewhat straightforward, but the monitoring might be challenging, or maybe the referral part is the challenging part. So anyway, I just really wanted to draw attention to the fact that there are both components, referral and follow-up. And without both of them, we're probably going to be in a situation where families are not accessing the type of referral resources that are intended. So what are we going to talk about for the next couple of minutes? Really a few key considerations related to referral and follow-up. And this first bullet point really is an important one. I know, Sally knows, Mary Catherine knows, your whole COIN team, right? We know that you all do referrals already. I would be very surprised if I heard from any LIA that you are not doing referrals for maternal depression. However, what I know and what others know, and perhaps you're reflecting on yourself, is that oftentimes these referrals are not done in a standardized or systematic manner. And that is where we see a lot of the breakdown and a lot of the challenges in getting families to necessary services. The idea that the referral process is not being done in a standardized way, which often leaves the referral and follow-up process falling through the cracks at different points in time. So when we're talking about referral and follow-up, there are a number of different considerations if an LIA is interested in standardizing or making their referral and monitoring practices more systematic. Things like who's conducting the referral. And let me just start by saying, these sound like really mundane, really sort of basic considerations, but in my experience, you'd be surprised that some of these very sort of basic elements, again, there's an appreciation that these are things that are important, but what I'm trying to impart and emphasize is that these are things that really should be done in a systematic, standardized fashion. So identifying who within your LIA is conducting the referral. Figuring out how referral information is being shared, right? Are you calling a mental health provider? Are you emailing a mental health provider? Are you actually showing up at that mental health provider and providing that referral information? How is the follow-up and monitoring conducted? When is it being conducted? So again, if you make a client referral for maternal depression, when are you following up with both the referral agency, but also your clients around whether or not they are engaging in those services? Who's the contact person at the agency to which a home visiting client is being referred, right? Again, sounds like it's a very sort of, basic question, but you would be surprised the importance of having sort of a designated individual who's on the other end of the referrals, who can be sort of a contact person. And then finally, are there memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreements that you can develop with external agencies that you're referring families to? So these are some considerations, not necessarily an exhaustive list. And if you can move to the next slide, please. I want to highlight these two articles. And I'll acknowledge the top article is one that I was a co-author on. And the other is by a group led by Sarah Dauber. Why am I highlighting these two articles? If folks were to take a look at these articles, you will see that both of these teams have attempted to highlight key considerations related to referral and follow-up. So many of those bullet points you saw in the previous slide, you will see reference in these two articles and many other key considerations. So I think these can be really informative as you are hopefully moving from doing referrals to doing more systematic referrals, to get you to think about what are the different considerations, what are the different variables that might be important to keep in mind. Who's doing the referral, when the referral is being done, the method of communication. So again, these two articles, I believe, are really good resources. Not going to dig into either of them in detail, but you see sort of the synopsis of what they cover. And I do think that they are pretty user-friendly and accessible to LIAs. Next slide, please. So as we think about, doing referrals, a few sort of overarching sort of considerations and points to make, right? So as we think about doing referral, it's important to use a strengths-based, client-focused approach, right? And I'm preaching to the choir here in saying that. But there are a couple of things that I think are really important related to that. And the first is, if there are options in terms of the referral site, educating your client about those referral options, right? Instead of saying, we're going to make a referral to X agency. Well, if there's X agency and Y agency, can you share information about those two agencies with a client? And there may be some things, hours of availability, the types of clinicians that work at the different agencies that might actually matter to your client and would be important to ask their opinion about before making that referral. And then also understanding a client's readiness for change, right? And this is a really important consideration, and one that, again, if we had more time, we could do a deeper dive into. But you may have a client who is just starting to engage in some conversations about her mental health. So she may be willing to engage in conversations, but may not be ready at this point in time to engage in more sort of formal conversations with a provider. So, understanding where a client's head is in terms of her readiness for change, really important. And you can sort of file away what you're finding. And it may be that a client who is screening positive on an Edinburgh or a PHQ, maybe at this point in time isn't quite ready for that referral, but having those conversations, documenting those conversations, and knowing that maybe in a few days, in a few weeks, that client will be ready. The use of a warm handoff is, something that many of you, I'm sure, have sort of seen, whether it's related to referral for psychosocial risks or referral for other issues. And, the idea of the warm handoff is pretty straightforward, right? The client is directly introduced to a new agency or a referral site in person by the client's home visitor. And why is this important? Well, it helps confer trust and rapport that a client has developed with her home visitor as she's being referred to the new agency. Of course, there's some challenges with this approach, right? Particularly over the last 18 to 20 months with the pandemic, right? It's just been a lot harder to do that in-person warm handoff. I have heard of many programs, and feel free to put this in the chat if you're doing this, but I have heard programs doing sort of virtual warm handoffs, right? Getting together with a referral agency, on a Zoom or on a Teams call, and actually doing sort of the introduction, on behalf of the client virtually. Next slide, please. And when we think about referrals, right, it's also important to think about referral sources, right? So typically, home visiting and early childhood providers rely on external resources to provide these mental health services. And again, many of you are probably familiar with different types of external resources, but the three most common are community mental health providers, primary care providers, behavioral health specialists. So I say that because some folks may be more familiar or more comfortable with one of these external resources, but important to consider that all of these, types of providers may be able to provide, mental health services and supports for the families you're working with. But the third bullet point really also emphasizes that you need to understand the types of services that these providers offer, right? So a primary care provider, may be an appropriate referral source, but you'd want to make sure that you're understanding what type of, mental health resources and what type of capacity the primary care provider has to be able to address mental health issues. The final bullet point is one that I know I have heard many times, in work that I've done, with LIAs and external agencies over the last few years. This idea that the community mental health providers, the primary care providers, the behavioral health specialists, in the same way that we as LIAs and we as home visitors need to know what those agencies do, those agencies also need to understand what home visiting does. And one of the things you'll see in some of the published literature is that, many of these behavioral health providers, primary care providers, they may say, oh yeah, home visiting, I kind of know what that is, but they may need to have their capacity built a little bit to understand exactly why it is that you're making a referral to them for a psychosocial risk like maternal depression. So very important step, and sometimes that conversation and that capacity building with the external provider is something that an LA might need to engage in. And then the final slide, please.
Darius, real quick, before we move on, if I may, I just want to put a plug in for folks to think about also whether it is important for you to maybe make dual referrals, or at least notify someone like the primary care provider if you've got permission from your family. I'm thinking about families that we serve, particularly those that were very resistant to accessing services. And sometimes it's really helpful for a person to hear the same message about the importance of behavioral health and of addressing depression from multiple sources before they're ready to act on that knowledge. And so considering not only making your external referral to whoever those behavioral health specialists are that are available to your families, also thinking about whether, assuming again you've got those appropriate permissions in place, that you also notify the mother or the father's primary care provider so that they're first of all aware as they're providing care to that same family member, but also would be another person to work with the family so that they may feel more comfortable accessing services.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, Sally.
You know, Sally, I'd love to echo that. Also, some of you may not know, but I am a primary care provider in my other life. And the pandemic has been so difficult to get people connected to mental health supports, but things are changing all the time. So in my own practice, we recently hired our first Spanish-speaking social worker, which will change access for more than half of my patients. And we also recently got an internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy program that's a series of courses, and some of my patients whom I've been talking to about anxiety for years do not want to go talk to a human being, but they're really open to doing something online, and that's something that's brand new that I can offer that I couldn't before. So I just encourage you to keep the PCPs in your communications when you have the right agreement from the patient in place, because their resources change. They may have been entirely unable to respond a month ago or 6 months ago, and much more in a totally different position today.
That's a great point too, Mary Catherine.
Thank you, Sally and Mary Catherine.
Yeah, I want to share one more lesson learned because I will never forget this. And that is also thinking about and making sure that you truly are aware of what the response is going to be from that referral entity. I'm thinking particularly about an experience where there was a crisis with a family and we thought we had appropriate resources to refer that parent to when there was a crisis. You know, as it always happens or often happens in home visiting, it was after hours. And so that adds another layer when something happens after hours with your referral resources particularly. And so we thought we had an agreement. And when we had an actual family in a situation and tried to make that referral, we found that we didn't have the connection that we thought we had, and that things did not work as smoothly and as appropriately as we needed them to when we had a family in crisis. So that's the other lesson learned I just want to share today. If you have other lessons like that, please do put them in the chat or come off mute as we have time for reflection. But a critical lesson that we learned, and we had to go back to that agency provider and negotiate and find out where was the breakdown, what do we need to do differently next time. And so we did that. We were successful with getting that understanding in place, and it did work in the future. So just an important lesson I wanted to share.
Yeah. And you know, I'm seeing in the chat a comment from Tracy about MOUs that you have in place with a couple mental health agencies, and you're, you know, highlighting that, you know, the wait list is the biggest issue. And certainly that is something that, we have experienced many times, with the coin and with other projects, this idea of the wait list. So that really speaks to, this final slide that I have, that there are barriers, right, to initiating and engaging in external resources, right? So I remember when we were having conversations around referral and monitoring with the initial coin, we heard, this comment about, yeah, you're telling us all of these potential referral sites, but we can't get our clients into them. So thanks, but we need a little bit more to go with. And so really one of the things that emerged from the first coin, and I know you've heard us say this before, but just, reiterating this idea that there are also internal resources, right, that you can think about integrating into your program. And perhaps for clients who aren't able to access those external providers because of a wait list or because there isn't language concordance, the internal resources, Moving Beyond Depression or Mothers and Babies, and these again are just examples. There are other things that you could do internally. That may be something that is important, because if you want to be responsive to the client's needs in as close to real time as possible and not wait the 6, 9, 12 months for a slot to open up, can be really important to try to get somebody to engage in some in-house services initially. So again, we could spend an entire couple hours talking about different, features of referral and monitoring. Again, I would encourage you, if this is an issue that you want to be doing some more thinking about, to go to one or both of those articles that I referenced. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that you need to follow the entire sort of prescription that is in those 2 articles, but I think you will see a lot of bullet points of key considerations, and some of those might be really useful for you to pull out and maybe even test in a small way with a PDSA cycle.
Doris, we also have a comment in the chat. I wonder if you're familiar with Talkspace.com, a website for online counseling.
I am familiar with it, but I don't know enough about what people's experiences have been using it. And I don't know about the experiences of perinatal individuals and whether that has been, something that matters in terms of, using that platform. But again, I think what I'm getting the sense from folks about, and I think that this is exactly the way we need to be thinking about this, is in the absence of sort of a brick and mortar referral source that you could refer clients to because of various issues, what are alternatives, right? I mentioned internal resources. You're mentioning here, Wendy, online resources that may also be important and useful to link to. So I would encourage folks to be able to identify things like Talkspace or other sites that would be also relevant.
And Tracy, I see you're remarking on also checking in with your infant mental health consultant. For those of you that are fortunate enough to have those folks, that's an ideal use of them to support your home visiting staff. And Amy, you also make a good point about the fact that Mary Catherine referred to, which is that resources are evolving and are changing. So anything else you want to say about that same day access to behavioral health services? It sounds amazing.
I don't have too much information, but just that the idea behind it is that they want to have services available when people are finally ready to seek them, that there isn't that barrier that we've been talking about with there being long wait lists. And so trying to be able to offer a short-term program that sounds like it focuses on cognitive behavior therapy, not medicine related, to really kind of help with urgent needs. And with the idea, if it seems like long-term services are needed, that they can help bridge the gap until that can be put in place. And so that way it's kind of meeting that need, or like I was just saying, bridging that gap between recognizing that like you do want services, but then having something to do until your spot on the wait list opens up.
Sounds like a really nice resource to have in your community. Thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts or reflections or questions?
I love the comment from Amy and the earlier comment from Mary Catherine. You know, I think in your statements, you're nicely highlighting, you know, the importance of, again, sort of understanding what those referral sources, those referral agencies, you know, are able to provide. You know, Amy, you made the comment about, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy versus medication. Well, that's really important to understand, right? If you're making a referral to an external provider, and the external provider, you know, I'm not saying that this is the approach you take, Mary Catherine, but I have, you know, colleagues who are primary care physicians who will say, Darius, the easiest thing that we can do for depression is give somebody a pill, right? Well, that may not really be what your clients want, right? And understanding sort of what is available, right, at a primary care or a behavioral health, referral site, knowing sort of the approach that they take. Are they just going to sort of default to pharmacologic treatment, or do they have the ability to provide CBT or interpersonal psychotherapy or something that is, you know, not going to involve medication? So again, all the more reason to really understand where you're going to be referring, you know, clients to, and that sort of information is important for you to understand and important for the client to understand before a referral is being made.
In the MOU process that we have, so it's a very, very busy practice, and they're still not fully up to speed again. They're still doing both telehealth and in person, but they created an intake person as our go-to. Like, our referrals go to one specific person, and they tend to get bumped ahead because they know that that person is already receiving some kind of services, and they know what we do. So it's not just a walk off the street, get in line for the wait list. It's, oh, this referral came from the Children's Center, so it's going to go in this pile. And that's been really helpful. And then as of this morning, they just sent us a new family. So they were dealing with someone that happened to find out she's pregnant and said, oh, well, you know, we have services for that. Go talk to them. So it's really nice to have. We've also had them do some of our groups and parent education surrounding self-care. And they come and they're fully bilingual, and they've led a session for us. So it's a nice partnership to have.
That's great. Thank you, Tracy. And along that same line, just one other quick tip, and then we're going to take a quick break. In the situation I referred to, where we had a mom needing crisis care after hours, we had the agreement that we reached with the agency is that they did know who we were. They knew that if we were making a referral after hours, it was a crisis and we needed to have access for that family. And so they came up with code words. And so their whole staff was trained in, if we use these words to make this referral, this tells you this is one you need to be acting on. So their staff all knew that. Our staff were trained in, if you've got an after hours crisis, this is what you need to include as you make that referral. And it just helped facilitate appropriate access. So lots of things like that you can do with your community partners. All right, everybody, in the interest of our own mental health, we're going to take a stretch break. So let's take 5 minutes and come back at 2:02, because the next items on the agenda are some that are always interesting, which is hearing from your peers. So take a few minutes, stand up, stretch, do what you need to do, and we'll be back shortly. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome back, everyone. It is 2:02, and we are leaning into the last bit of our call, where we have invited 2 LIAs to present, and we're very grateful to you for coming. And both are going to talk about their approach to supporting clients who have positive screens for maternal depression in accessing services. So I want to welcome Tyler Briscoe and let you know, Tyler, that I have your PDSA up on the screen and I have all of your documents downloaded. So please take yourself off mute and share with us your work on.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi there.
Okay, so I'm ready.
All right. Would you like me to start with?
You can start with protocol. I'm not sure whatever is first. I don't know. You
All
guys
right,
have
perfect.
PowerPoint. Yeah.
So Primo Center in Illinois has been working on helping clients access services. And one of the things we noticed when we started looking at this driver was that they have a very high rate of offering a referral to evidence-based services. They have a very high rate of acceptance, and they have a very high rate, almost 100% all of the time, of clients accessing services. We thought, what is going on there and what can we learn? And then the last thing I want to point out, just to call back to what Rachel taught us about, is that on our big aim here, the percent of women who access services and have an improvement in symptoms, we are starting to see, and we don't yet see a trend, right? We have 1, 2, 3 points go up and this one goes down a little and this one goes up again. We don't quite have a trend and we are 1 point shy of a shift. But this is my favorite part of collaboratives. We're 9 months in and this is where we start to see the measures really take off. And we say, what's going on? So what's going on is that they are working on this process. Tyler, do you want to describe what you've been doing in your 4 cycles? Or do you want me to pull up your protocol first? What do you think?
Yes.
Protocol
You
first?
can, yeah.
You got it. Do you want the process map or the protocol doc?
You can pull up the process map.
Alrighty. There we have it. Can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, so when we first meet the family, we enroll the family in a home visiting program. And after we enroll them, each family is given an Eddisburn assessment. So if the family score higher than a 9, then they are referred. If they score lower than a 9, then the service is disregarded unless needed. So when they score higher than a 9, the home visitor will email the supervisor or the case manager to see if the client is connected to therapy services. If not, the supervisor sends the case manager a referral form. The case manager contacts the therapist. The therapist will contact the client within 48 hours. The client accepts the referral. If they don't accept the referral, works with the family to develop a treatment goal. But 9 times out of 10, the family usually utilize the resources that's available here at the shelter. So once the client accepts the referral, the client will begin with the therapeutic services, usually within a week after they are referred. And then bi-weekly, the supervisor and the home visitor will join in case manager calls to discuss the client's progress in therapy. And we will also discuss whether the client requires additional services. If the supervisor refers to the family to CPP for referral, that begins with it. That takes additional like 2 weeks to get the family up and going and meet the therapist. The supervisor meets with the CPP on a weekly basis to discuss the family progress as well. And the home visitor is also informed on what's going on. So everybody is connected and know what's going on with the family so they can get the help that's needed. And during the supervisor relates to the progress updates to the home visitors, like I just said. Within 2 months of receiving the therapy, the caregiver pre-screen for the Eddisburn assessment. So if they score lower than a 9, then they no longer need the services unless they want to continue with the services. But if they continue to score higher than a 9, they will continue, you know, with their weekly or bi-weekly services with a therapist. And the home visitors will continue to provide parent-child engagements and opportunities with the family. So that's for the progress map.
Awesome. That's great. And you developed this early on. If I can share how you started testing this, Tyler. This is Primo's 4 PDSA cycle ramp. And what I love about this is you can see they've done 4 ramps. The first one was just getting the team up to speed on the protocol, as Tyler just got us all up to speed on their protocol. In the second, during supervision, you reviewed the process map and made sure all the steps were followed. And you also had a protocol checklist, right?
Yes.
Which I can share in a minute. And then on the third one, you wanted to keep testing this because it seemed to be effective.
Yes.
And refer all the clients. And then in the fourth one, you only had 1 person in that 2-week block. So you're continuing the same test of the process map.
Mm-hmm.
I love that the learning from each of these cycles led into the question you asked on the next one. I love that these cycles are 2 to 4 weeks long. They're nice and short, and you've been working through it. And if I show you guys some of the protocol checklists, Tyler, I'd love it if you describe what happened as you used these and what kinds of decisions you made.
Okay.
So the first one was a checklist for the referrals. And how do you use this?
So we go, like, once again, we identified a family who scored higher than 6. Then the supervisors will go through the assessment, and the home visitors will identify the services that the family is already receiving. So some families are already receiving therapeutic services from their case managers or CPP for their children. And then supervisors will also review the IM cams that's done by the case managers. And that information will be related to the Eddisburn response. So it pretty much everything ties in. And based on the identified services, the supervisors will complete the referral as needed.
Okay. So you use these in supervision?
Yes.
And you're still using this?
Yes.
All right. And then the other one you had was the protocol, right? And this walks out in words and sentences what your process map shows.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, I read in your PDSAs, there was one of these that you tried and you tested?
Yes.
And you abandoned it. Tell us about that.
So it was abandoned because the client no longer wanted to be involved with the services.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we just had abandoned it, but we did, continue to work with the family as needed. But as far as like the additional services, speaking with they would still speak with their case managers and still work with the home visitors. But as far as getting the additional services, they wanted to opt out of it because, this is a shelter, and then they do have lives to attend, like if they're working or whatever, so they're not here to utilize the services all the time.
And did you abandon one of the checklists you had created for your process at one point?
I'm not sure. I know because me and my supervisor Dana was working on this
Yeah.
together. Yeah. So, and she was not able to present today. So I'm like kind of filling in for her.
You're hitting it out of the park. You're doing a great job. So let me pause for a minute. I want to ask the rest of you, what questions or comments do you have for Tyler about this work?
You got one comment in the chat that having that checklist was a great idea. So you may have a steal going on.
This is Wani from New Bedford Healthy Families. I'm one of the program supervisors here. I actually thought that was a really great idea because when we're talking about things during supervision and we do place a referral, I pretty much go back and forth within our participant document system. And I think that would be a great idea to utilize when we're having that open discussion during any types of referrals that we're utilizing out in the community. So it keeps track to follow and then follow up at the same time, especially when you're overseeing like a 50 caseload and kind of like keeping track of everybody. I think that's a wonderful idea. So I actually took a screenshot of it. So great job on that.
Thanks, Wani. We'll send you in the email we send after the call. We'll have all the links to where you can download it in the database too.
Thank you very much.
Of course. All right, wonderful. Another thank you for you, Tyler, from Kellisbeth Cortez. Indeed. Jacqueline, you want to add something, Jackie?
Oh, yes, please. One of the things that they also did was to include a referral form. And I remember, Tyler, when you and Dana were talking about this, one of the things about the checklist, it was in some ways you started going less over the checklist, and you once you would start talking about the client, and this person would need a referral, so you just she would just refer right then and there in the supervisory session. If I'm thinking correctly, is that and I don't know if my recollections are right or not, but that was something I thought I heard, and just thank you so much for sharing all this. It's so interesting.
And this on the screen is the referral form that they use. And Tyler, this is, I guess, what your supervisor fills out as you're talking through the case in order to make the internal referral for therapy, yes?
Yes, that's the form that the supervisor is filling out.
Yeah. Wonderful. Uh-oh, we got another steal in the chat box from Amy. Thank you, Tyler, for sharing all of this. It's wonderful. And, you know, sorry, go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Great work. And I'm excited about your run chart. I'm excited about those clients that are getting better. And we'll see next week, you may hit a shift. All right. If there are further questions, please put them in the chat. I want to pull up the next example of a PDSA. And this one is building on the presentation we had on motivational interviewing last month. So we invited our team, Danville, also from Illinois, and asked them to share with us their work on motivational interviewing.
So, hi, I'm Brandy, and then this is Shannon. So yeah, so like when we first started this process, I think we were just, one of the things that came out from the parent educators is we, you know, our protocol is to do the EPTS screening with our families, but it was coming out like some of the families weren't that comfortable answering those questions right away. And the parent educators also were not that comfortable with asking such private questions like so soon in starting services. So one of the things we wanted to really work on was building the confidence of our parent educators, but also bringing in the parents too and having them feel comfortable with us in answering those questions and not looking at it so much as the screening tool we're doing, but more in a conversational component and then getting the information, like starting with that. And then of course, then they would fill out the screening tool. But I think the way we were initially doing it was like, oh, here's this depression screening tool. We need you to fill it out. And then it just really wasn't normalizing mental health and just stress and just overall concerns. So when we first started the PDSA cycle, we really wanted to focus on just a few of the more important MI techniques that we thought about. We actually brought in a parent that was in our program to help us pick the 3 motivational interviewing questions. And the first one that she had brought up was like asking permission. That was something that she felt very strong about. So we really worked on that one. And what we noticed with doing that, like we initially thought, oh, we're going to do a pre-test and a post-test. And we had 5 questions that we wanted to ask. And we put that together. We went to implement that. And then we realized that it was way too many questions. So we made, basically by asking the 5 questions, it made the parent educator and the family more nervous about completing the screening. And one parent educator, even though she felt it went well, because she incorporated it into a conversation, she thought it was easier with the families she was already offering support for and was more concerned about like new families coming in. So we did have to make a change and adapt that. And we just moved it, as in like 1.2, you can see we reduced it from 5 questions to just 1 question. Yep. And then Shannon's going to talk about that change.
When we finally realized that maybe the first time around we needed to make some adjustments, we all got together with our team and the parent that had volunteered, and we just really felt like maybe just taking it down to just 1 question and kind of simplifying it for everyone. So the parent that we were working with felt like she would appreciate a question being asked to her, just something as simple as, you know, is there anything you wouldn't feel comfortable with talking about today? Or so that was the kind of the question that she came up with. So we went with that, and I think it really helped the parent and us to kind of make that transition into the actual screening tool a little bit easier. So she just said that, you know, after we used the technique with her and a couple other parents, we all just kind of came back together, and she just really felt like she was acknowledged when we asked her that question. And that overall, the families that we talked to about this said they felt that it was a little bit more comfortable for them, and that because we ended up using, what was it we used? Normalizing to talk. So we started using that strategy and just really focusing on the 1 question and having a conversation and just kind of normalizing the overall process for them. And one parent stated that it helped her know that her fears were not irrational, and that it was common for parents to feel the way she felt, and that her fears were validated. So that kind of led us into our next cycle, which I think is 1.3. I'm trying to pull it up. So then we went into how that helped us as a team when we started feeling comfortable and we were asking the one question and we kind of felt like we had normalizing down, that allowed us at that time to really gauge the family and to get an understanding of where we were. Are they ready to move forward for us to give them this assessment, to present this assessment to them? Or are we at a place where we need to kind of just step back and maybe wait till the next visit? So I'm trying to think, let's see what else. So yeah, I think that just kind of helped us, all of us, feel a little bit comfortable that it's okay if we don't do it just because we plan on doing it. We need to really see how the parent responds to the questions, how we approach it. So overall, we all felt more comfortable. We felt like the families were more comfortable answering the questions and taking the referrals. And then we'll go into Brandy.
Yeah. So we felt like overall, like with the changes and the adaptations we made, using the MI techniques of, asking permission, normalizing, and then getting their advice and feedback, and basically just gauging where they were before we handed them the assessment. The changes made for the cycle we felt like went really well. It flowed a lot more easily. Our families reported that it was easier for them to complete the assessment with us. They felt heard. It was simple and like to the point. It opened up conversations about their past experiences without them feeling like we were pushing that information, and they felt like they were already building rapport with us, and they felt listened to. And then our parent educators reported that it opened the conversation up easily for them when they used the MI techniques, and it allowed them to be more comfortable like discussing the screening tool and the sensitive topics that came with it. And so I felt like overall, like the families being comfortable completing the tools. I don't think we were having some families that were refusing to complete the screening tool. And since we've started doing the MI techniques, I don't believe we've had any refuse to actually take it. So to me, that is success, because that was something we struggled with was, well, when they're refusing to take it, like, how do we, encourage them to do it? Well, we haven't really had to encourage them, because I think the process that we're doing now, probably more so with the permission and the normalizing.
And I think too, as a home visitor, once we'd have a parent refuse to do it, it was so hard to bring it back up again, because I was almost scared of their reaction, or if they thought I was, bugging them. So just approaching it a little bit differently. We've also, do you want to talk about the folders?
Yeah. One of the things that we've implemented to just normalize, to make it more normalizing for our families, is we have a mental health folder. We call it stress management folder, that every family gets, and we give it to them at the beginning of like our very first visit. And it has all the resources for mental health in there. It has self-care techniques and strategies. It also we have a drop-in group that we do once a month with our infant mental health consultant, and she has agreed to just do a drop-in group for our families. So it has like the list in there for the whole year of like, this is the group dates. You just drop in if you have something exciting to say and you just want to get it out there for people. You can do that. If you're having a stressful time and there's something going on and you just need somebody to talk to for support, join this group, because it's with other, families and other mothers and stuff. So that I think has went really well, because that's given to everybody. Everybody has that opportunity, not just those that are like scoring high on the depression scale. So I think that's worked out really, really well too. I don't know if you want anything more.
There's so much richness. There's so much richness here. The way you set the table like that. This is universal. We do this for everybody with the stress management, and then coming back and leading with parent designed questions, right, to invite the conversation. It sounds like it's really enabled the conversations to flow in a way that's potentially easier for the home visitor and more comfortable for the family, right?
Yes. I think it's worked out really well. We're super excited about definitely the binder and the infant mental health group. I mean, I think those have made some really good, and our families are super excited. I think they seem super excited when they get the folder and they realize everything that's in there. So it's been good.
I'm surprised we're not seeing chats asking for your folder. We may still see that. I'm going to keep the conversation going, but we want to do a real-time evaluation. Remember last time we did our evaluation, we didn't show you the results and everybody was like, where are the results? So this time we brought it back. We're going to be able to see your evaluation of what you like. Oh, and Kate gave you some props for your QI, how specific and detailed your predictions were. Nice job. And thank you, Kate, for helping me with my job. So if you would, click on the evaluation in the chat and let us know what went well today and what you'd like more of or different next time.
Yeah, and I want to add my thanks. Thanks to Amy for playing our game. Thanks to Tyler and Brandy and Shannon for sharing. It was wonderful, and we appreciate your willingness to do that. Thank you to everybody who joined. As you fill out the evaluation, and we'll send that link. So if you have a few minutes after this and can do that, that would be great. Just want to remind you on our next call, we are going to really focus on parent leadership. And we're going to have a guest join us for that. And we're going to have a facilitator who's wonderful at mindfulness moments. So sort of as a December gift, we're going to bring her in and ask her to share with us as well. So looking forward to seeing you in December. As always, appreciate so much the work you do and your effort to join us today. So thanks so much for joining us. Have a great afternoon. And so we can't get the link. We will send that out as well with the materials. Olivia, anything you can do to, is the link not working, Vicki?
The link for the evaluation, it worked for me. It's up above. I think maybe it came off the screen. Can we drop it again? Thank you.
Okay.
Let's see if that works.
Try that one. And as always, thanks so much. Continue to do the great work, and we will be talking with you soon.
Sally, are you going to pull up the Menti while they do it? Can we see it?
No, I think we moved to just doing the survey because we ran short on time. So I love using the Menti, but we don't want to take too much of your time. So
all right,
click on the link, and that way you can do it at your convenience and still send it in to us. Thank you, though.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your presentations. I love them.